What is up, Mouse Fam? Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be switching it up a little and heading about an hour and a half north of Disneyland to check out, personally, one of my favorite parks in America, Universal Studios Hollywood. While it doesn't have a huge lineup of attractions, Universal Hollywood does have some solid rides. So join me today as we rank all 11 attractions at Universal Studios Hollywood. Let's jump into it. Alright, before we get started, as always, a couple parameters. We're only ranking the attractions today. So, although they have a great lineup of shows, we're not going to be ranking any of the shows or any of the walkthroughs. We're just ranking attractions with a ride vehicle today. With that being said, let's jump into the list. Coming in at last place at number 11, Silly Swirly Fun Ride. I actually don't think this attraction is that bad. It's a really solid flat ride in a park that really needs flat rides. Unfortunately, Universal on both coasts is pretty lacking in the flat ride department. Fortunately though, Silly Swirly Fun Ride does the job. The biggest con against this ride is the wait times usually get pretty high for obviously just a Dumbo clone. It's not worth the 30 to 40 minute wait. Also, I'm not a big fan of the theming here. It fits in, it's great for kids. It just feels corny to me. The best part about this ride is it does have some solid views. It's a fun ride if you can ride it. I don't think it's that bad, but unfortunately it is the weakest of the attractions at Universal Studios. Coming in at 10th place, Despicable Me Minion Mayhem. This is a ride I'm pretty down on personally. It's a clone of an attraction that exists at Universal Orlando. It took away a much better attraction in its place here. It gets way too long of waits for just being a simulator ride. I know it's great for kids and it's a park that needs it. Obviously it's a big hit with families. I don't think it's a terrible attraction, but I think it could be way better, and I don't think it's a great use of this space. It's fun doing once, but it's not a great re-ride. Coming in at number 9, DreamWorks Theater featuring Kung Fu Panda. This is the Shrek 4D replacement, and honestly, I would say it is a better version of Shrek 4D. I think this is a good replacement. I think it is a good theater. It's got a really fun pre-show. Unfortunately, the show itself just kind of relies on gimmicks to be good. I don't think the storyline or plot is very interesting or catches your attention very well. I'm sure if you're a big fan of the Kung Fu Panda franchise, then you'll like this ride more. But if you're just a casual fan of the franchise, I don't think it's that great. Honestly, the seats take away more than they add, in my opinion. They're trying to give you a 4D seat experience with having individual seats, but I don't love it. I don't think it works that great. I do really love the projection mapping, especially towards the end of this attraction, and I do think the screen reveal is a pretty cool effect. Unfortunately, I don't think there's that much going for the show. It's great for families, it's great that it's a high capacity ride, and it has a cool pre-show. Other than that, there's not a whole lot going for this show except for the projection mapping. Coming in at number 8, Flight of the Hippogriff. I think I'm higher on this coaster than other people. The main critique of this ride is it is just way too short for the lines it gets, and I 100% agree with that. This ride is not worth more than a 15 to 20 minute wait, simply because it's such a short coaster. Now, it is a family coaster. It has really solid theming. I think the theming of the queue is super underrated, and obviously it has a really good Buckbeak animatronic, but you want to be able to ride this ride with super short waits. So if you don't have Express, you really have to rope drop this ride or just go super late at night. It's not a good ride during the day because it is a brutal wait, especially if it's hot out. And it really is just a kid coaster. It's a great kid coaster that knocks it out of the park in that regard, but you're not going to want to wait for an attraction that long. So that's why it comes in lower on the list. Coming in at number 7, the Simpsons Ride. Just like Despicable Me Minion Mayhem, I'm personally not a big fan of this ride. I'm a casual fan of The Simpsons. I think the episodes are funny. I'm not a big super fan. I just don't like this theming inside of a theme park. I know it fits kind of well for the carnival atmosphere, but for this ride being the mainstay of the upper lot, right at the end there with prime real estate, I just don't think it does the job. It's a fun ride. It's good for families and adults, but I don't think it's nearly as good as the ride it replaced. I think Back to the Future has way more staying power as an attraction. It carries much more nostalgia for theme park fans. And so I think that this ride is just can't ever live up to that. I do think The Simpsons as a franchise has staying power, but the fact that Disney now owns the rights to Simpsons, it just creates a pretty gray area. I'm not sure this attraction has a very bright future. And personally, I'm not a big fan of the ride itself. I know a lot of people like this ride, but I don't think it's that great, and it can only come in at number 7. Coming in at number 6, Transformers The Ride 3D. Transformers The Ride is an interesting one because I think among rare guests or guests that only go to Universal once a year, this ride's pretty popular, but among theme park and annual pass guests, this ride is pretty hated. I kind of see both sides. I think if you ride it once and you don't ride it for a while, it is pretty fun. It's got some really cool effects. Obviously, a really interesting ride system, but I don't think the Transformers is that interesting of a ride. I don't think it has rewritability. I think it's chaotic in there, and the story and plot don't make a whole lot of sense. Unless you're a huge Transformers fan, I don't think this ride's going to be that popular among re-rides. I'm glad it exists in the park. I do think it fits well with a pretty fun queue, but this is not a ride I want to re-ride that much. Outside of a couple cool effects, I don't think this is that amazing of an attraction. It's good for the park that it's in, but it's not that great. All right, that brings us into our top 5, and these top 5 I think are all great attractions. 6 and below have their critiques, and I'm not huge fans of. These top 5 I think are amazing attractions and must-dos on every visit to Universal Studios. With that being said, coming in at number 5, Revenge of the Mummy, the ride. Just on pure enjoyment alone, Revenge of the Mummy is a really fun coaster. I think, thanks to the first 2 rooms and the queue, this is one of the best themed coasters in the world, and I'm a huge sucker for themed coasters. Unfortunately, though, I think this ride does fall short in a couple areas. Number one, it's obviously way too short. The lines can get up 60 minutes, 90 minutes sometimes, and you're out in the heat usually. So unless you have Express Pass or you're riding this in the morning or at night, it can be a brutal wait. My recommendation, hit this ride in the morning. It almost never gets long waits in the morning as everyone hits the upper lot. So it's a great ride to hit on the lower lot early in the day. Also, I think, not to spoil anything on the ride, but I'll say the second half of the ride is not as thrilling as it should be. The first time it's pretty fun, but every ride after that, it kind of feels like, okay, this is it. And obviously the ending is extremely anticlimactic. Something needs to be done about that ending. And when you compare the ending to the ending of Mummy in Universal Orlando, it just becomes even more disappointing. I think Revenge of the Mummy is a great coaster. I'm super glad it exists, and I think the theme is amazing. Unfortunately, it just kind of runs out of steam by the end, and so it comes in at number 5 on this list. Coming in at number 4, the newest addition to Universal Studios Hollywood, Secret Life of Pets Off the Leash. This is the first classic dark ride at Universal Studios Hollywood, and I think this ride is fantastic. I think this is one of the best additions Universal Studios Hollywood could have made. I'm so happy it exists. It takes up a pretty small plot of land overall for a dark ride, which is great, and the theming is amazing. This has one of the best queues, not just in Universal, but Disney as well. This might be one of the best queues in America. That's how good the queue is. The ride itself is fantastic, super cute. Even if you're not a big Secret Life of Pets fan, I think you're still going to love this dark ride. It's great for kids. It's great for families. Honestly, I think it's really good for adults as well. It has so many cool and fun effects. The only 2 negatives I would say about this ride, obviously the first being what everyone would agree with, there is no reason the ride vehicles should be as restrictive as they are. Honestly, this is a huge con against Universal in general. These ride vehicles make no sense to me. They're incredibly restrictive for no reason, and that's really going to hinder the rideability for many guests coming to Universal. That needs to be changed immediately because that's by far the worst part about this ride. The other con I would add is I don't think the storyline makes that much sense. I've seen the Secret Life of Pets movies a couple times, but I still don't really understand what's going on in this ride. It took my wife and I 3 or 4 rides to kind of patch together what's even happening. Obviously, that's not that big of a deal. The ride is chaotic and fun and vibrant and has beautiful sets, and it integrates screens really well. So I don't think that's that big of a deal, just a con to mention. But the screen integration, like I said, the practical effects, the music, everything about this ride, I think, was so well done by Universal. If this is the future of Universal Studios Hollywood dark rides, then we have a bright future ahead of us. That brings us into our top 3. Coming in at number 3, Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey. I do think this is a borderline headline-worthy attraction, meaning it could headline most parks and be an anchor for that park. Unfortunately, the fact that it does exist at Universal Orlando hurts it a bit, and I think the rideability for this ride is pretty low. If you get motion sick easily, you're not going to be able to ride this. The KingdaKha arm technology that the ride uses for the ride vehicles is fairly restrictive and fearful for a lot of older guests, and it does have a height requirement, obviously. But with that con being said, this ride has so many pros. I think the queue, just like Secret Life of Pets, is one of the best queues. Honestly, this might be the best queue in California, maybe in America. It is an amazing queue. Honestly, even if you don't want to ride the ride, go through this queue. It's really worth your time, whether you're a Harry Potter fan or not. The ride itself is amazing. It integrates screens and practical effects really well, which, as you'll see, is a common theme among the top 4 or 5 rides at Universal Hollywood. Whether you're a super fan of Harry Potter or just a casual fan, Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey is one of the best rides Universal Creative has ever built. And obviously, the castle that it gave us is an icon at Universal Studios Hollywood, so that gives it bonus points as well. But coming in at number 2, Jurassic World, the ride. Before I jump into talking about this ride, the reason why it comes in at number 2 and not number 3, the reason why it bumps ahead of Forbidden Journey, is I think this ride utilizes practical effects a little bit more than Forbidden Journey. Obviously, the queue is much worse, and so that dings the ride. It could for sure use a better queue. But the ride itself utilizes screens and practical effects so well. You don't get soaking wet like Splash Mountain, which is a huge plus. I don't want to be soaking wet when I'm at a theme park, but it does splash you just enough with light splashing effects all throughout the ride, which is really great. Obviously, the last drop is fantastic, probably the best thrill to be had at Universal Studios. And who doesn't love giant dinosaurs fighting each other? Jurassic World really gives you it all. The storyline is very immersive, very well done. That's probably the only good part about the queue, is it does establish the story very well. And even though this ride does get huge waits, it's a pretty quick loader. The vehicles fit a lot of people, so it's not going to be generally a terrible wait. Obviously, during the middle of the day on a hot summer day, it's going to be a long wait, so that does stink. But I think Jurassic World, the ride, is one of the best rides Universal's ever built. The other bonus that it does get above Forbidden Journey is the fact that this ride doesn't exist anywhere else. It's an overlay of Jurassic Park, which exists at Orlando, but it's completely redone, and I would argue a better version of that ride. So for that reason, Jurassic World comes in at number 2. All right, that brings us to our top spot, the best ride at Universal Studios Hollywood. Coming in at number 1, the world famous Studio Tour. Now, I know a lot of locals might disagree with me on this because they don't re-ride the Studio Tour every time, but just speaking in general, trying to speak objectively about Universal Studios Hollywood, this is the main draw. It doesn't get much better than this. You have a 45-minute attraction that brings you so many different aspects. You get the IP franchise tie-in with Fast and Furious and King Kong. You get the practical movie sets taking you through actual real sets, and that's going to be bonus points for everybody. You get the tour guide, you get a little bit of comedy, you get history, you get thrill. This ride has it all. It's great for kids, families, adults. It really fits the bill for everybody. In my opinion, this is a must ride anytime you're at Universal Studios Hollywood, and is the best ride in the park and is worth price of admission on itself. All right, guys, that's our list. All 11 attractions at Universal Studios Hollywood ranked. Next, we have a video of all 9 shows and entertainment at Universal Studios Hollywood ranked, so you can keep a lookout for that. Let us know down in the comments what you think of the list. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know. You can also follow us on Twitter at RankingTheMouse. Also, if you want to plan a Universal Studios Hollywood trip for yourself, feel free to message me anytime so we can help you plan the best trip to Universal Studios Hollywood with the best tips, the best tricks, and the best deals anytime you want to go. With that being said, guys, feel free to hit that subscribe button down below so you can be on the lookout for our next Universal Studios video. And until then, peace.